All right, everyone. Jeff Flake thinks that he might maybe kind of sort of launch a primary challenge against Donald Trump. I think he would be doomed to fail, and I'll tell you why. If you look at polling right now, you look at where Trump's at, somewhere, in the mid-40s or wherever he's at. It depends. Rasmussen has put him upwards of 50 at this point several times, whereas some, like a CNN poll, puts him in mid-30s. I tend to discount both outliers and assume maybe he's in the low to mid-40s or something, which isn't that bad. It's certainly survivable, and it's slowly rising because taxes are down and wages are up, so to speak. That's roughly similar to what he got in the presidential election. Therefore, I can only assume that the majority of people that voted for Trump still support him. Some people, fiscal issue voters, some of them who held out and didn't vote for him probably have flocked to him, while some of his, maybe pro-gun voters have left him at this point. So his overall coalition is roughly, again, not quite half of the voting public. I should say the politically active public. That is, you have to assume that some people, they're like, yeah, I don't really care. So they're not really part of that total. And then you've got your partisan voters, your ideological voters, and everything else. So there's no reason to primary Donald Trump. Any attempt to primary him is going to get beaten back. Because a lot of the Republicans will say, oh, well, it's basically the swamp is trying to claw its way back into relevance. They're still sad that Trump was nominated and won. And they're probably more sad about him winning than the fact that he became the nominee. They almost tried to sabotage him from within multiple times. You got to remember, keep in mind, this is what happened. The RNC basically abandoned Donald Trump for about a month during the election. When they realized that it wasn't affecting him in a negative manner and actually appeared to have boosted him, said, oh, please, Mr. Trump, we're so sorry that we did something that, we've never done before, which is abandon our own fucking candidate, and some of us went over literally endorsed Hillary Clinton. Now, we're so sorry about that fact. Okay, we love you again. You're such a wonderful guy. How many checks did he have to cut, by the way, in order to get that to happen? I don't think it was just because of the polling results. But Jeff Flake, do you know anything about him? Does he have any name recognition outside of his home state? No, not a lot. Other than the fact that he's a never-Trumper. So, yeah, somebody like me, politically cued in because it's sort of my job description. Okay, I've heard the name. I know what state he's from. That's about it. Who cares about what he believes in? He's not the president of the United States. It would be very, very strange. It would be the strangest of all if they were to primary Donald Trump. If he's at the same approval that he's at now, they're probably not going to allow anybody to try to primary him. They say, we're not going to have a primary. He's the nominee. He's the president. He's got the on-the-job experience. He's also rich, and he'll probably destroy you if you try to primary him anyway, so what's the point? We need unity within the party. And you do have, for all of their faults, people like Paul Ryan have actually tried to achieve that. Even Mitch McConnell, who still obviously doesn't like Trump. You remember at the State of the Union, what did he do? He just sort of sat there. He didn't even clap. He doesn't like Trump at all, but he's not going to say that. He knows better. At this point, he's been warned by other Republicans, hey, toe the line, because we're tired of dealing with your bullshit. We're going to side with Trump ultimately, because otherwise we're going to tear the party apart. Okay, we're going to have to give Trump some of what he wants. And he's willing to negotiate, too. He's even willing to negotiate with Democrats. Talks about Connor Lamb after the Pennsylvania election. Oh, he sounds like a swell guy. He's pro-gun, and, he's pro-life, which, I deviate from that maybe myself. But he sounds like a Republican. Wow, I kind of like the dude. Congrats to him. He ran a good campaign. It's kind of poison pilling, but it's actually very, very funny to see. Trump's strategy of leadership is working. Ultimately, what Trump is trying to do is working. You're just not hearing about it. Anytime a poll shows him above 45%, you don't hear about the poll in the news. Anytime he does something that you can't, subjectively call bad or actually works, like, taxes are down, the economy hasn't collapsed, we might actually get somewhere with North Korea. Nobody talks about it. They don't talk about it. Fox will talk about it all day. Nobody cares about Fox either. By the way, Fox is just as vestigial as CNN or any of these other groups. They don't have O'Reilly anymore. They don't have any of their heavy hitters. Megyn Kelly leaves. Nobody talented left at Fox. Fuck Tucker Carlson. Just people talk about how wonderful he is. He's an opinion piece teleprompter reader that happens to be decent at interviewing people. Okay. There are thousands of YouTubers who fit that description. Okay. So why should I care about this 8-figure limo rider? It doesn't matter to me. Jeff Flake will fail if he attempts to primary Donald Trump. The Democrats will laugh. He'd almost be helping the Democrats. By the way, that's probably the first thing Trump would say. Oh, here's Flaky Jeff. You know, I can see the moniker now. Flaky Jeff would prefer the Democrats win because he's got a long track record of being a liberal, and he'll trot out the two things on which he said something that sound left-wing. The Republicans will take that and run with it. Yeah, they would defeat him. They're going to vote. If he got primaried, Trump would still be the nominee. It's just there would be one less key to the White House that he'd have. He'd have to make up lost ground. By the way, I would think that ultimately the political situation in the United States come 2020, barring any, major happenings in the midterms, like we've got to wait for those results. Ultimately, we have to wait for the midterms to even begin predicting 2020. It has to be within a year, so you have to wait a year thereafter, see what happens with people who are in or out from the midterms. You have to wait and see what actually happens. The economy could go south. If the economy were to suddenly go into recession right now, no, Trump probably wouldn't be reelected. He wouldn't have any other major platform to sit on. Foreign policy, okay, maybe. Hey, I'm charismatic. Hey, I happen to be Donald Trump, but the money president thing is important. That's why when he says, well, we're going to tariff things, I have a feeling it's not going to lead to any negative economic repercussions. I'm sorry, I just don't believe it. I think on the money end, he'll do fine, and that's why he gets reelected. 90% chance as of this time. But again, we have to wait till after the midterms to judge that. But if he faces an actual strong primary challenge, it's unlikely. That would definitely be one strike against him. That would definitely weaken Trump's standing. It would make the Republicans look disunified. Now, as we've seen, he doesn't need full party unity because he won in 2016. Certainly with that, the Bushes, they endorsed the Clinton family because they're all dynastic. They all have orgies together and buy slaves and stuff. They do this sort of weird shit. So the Bushes were on the Clinton side. Mitt Romney was sort of Clintonian, which makes sense. The people are still talking about, oh, maybe Mitt will run again. Maybe Mitt will run next time around. Of course, now he's running for the Senate, which makes more sense. That's more what he's qualified to do. Bicker all day because he can't make his own decisions. Donald Trump, meanwhile, is a key executive. That's what he's always been. He's never been in a situation where he's had to be legislative in nature. Now, this can actually be a detriment. There have been other presidents, they're very imperial, they're only executive, no legislative experience, but the opposite is worse. Having a president like an Obama, who is only legislative in nature, makes you really good at diplomacy with the Western Europeans, the Western European governments being strangulated by bureaus and totally ineffective. Really great on that, really bad on everything else. Totally bad on everything else. Trump, meanwhile, can deal with Asia. He can deal with Middle Eastern politicians more easily, and he's much better on the economy. The Republicans right now are looking for round 2 of tax cuts. They're attempting to get a second wave of tax cuts on top of 30-year massive tax cuts that they've already passed. In the last 30 years, there's never been a tax cut as large as the Trump tax cut. And that's what it is. It's the Trump tax. He's the arbiter of that. Now he wants a second round of it. Oh, I love it. I think it's a great idea. I just think, as Gary Johnson pointed out, the one thing in the last year he said that I totally agree with, where are the cuts to go along with those tax cuts? I mean, cuts to the infrastructure of the government, to public spending. When are we going to audit the Fed? When are we going to abolish the IRS? When are we going to get rid of the NSA? Yeah, I would. They should be axed. Absolutely. Take these bureaus and shove them back in the asshole from whence they came. We'd be better off as a society. Look, we can run a surplus with massive taxes. We could double the tax cuts we've already had. All we have to do is get rid of enough government workers. No offense to any government workers out there. Some of you do a good job, but a lot of you are ultimately vestigial. You perform no necessary function that couldn't be performed by the private marketplace. You have more people in the private marketplace. Then you can have less taxes because you've got more people ultimately you're taxing, and you've got less spending, and it's just a great thing. That's what we need in society. We need to restrain, we need to throttle and choke the bureaucracy. We need to strangle it, and then we need a much smaller bureaucracy, like 10% of its current size. Again, I've said at least 50% reduction in the overall size and cost of government, commensurate with tax cuts. You then pass your tax cuts. At some point, you achieve a zero-sum balance, and you then can run a surplus potentially with economic growth. That's what we need to do, and then we need to pass a constitutional amendment to keep it that way. There should only be a certain proportion of the entire valuation of the nation that should be allocated to government and to things related to government. It should be a very small proportion indeed, unless you're in the middle of a defensive war where you've been invaded on your own territory. Then you can think about raising taxes a little bit because you have no choice. Oh yeah, we need a few more tanks because, a million Chinese troops just arrived in San Francisco, so, we're going to take some attrition there. We're going to need a little bit more money. Okay, that makes sense. We got to pay off the declining Roman Empire style. We got to pay off Attila the Hun so he doesn't sack us or something. It's just sort of the way that it works. And then Jeff Flake is inconsequential. Who's going to care? Nobody cares about Jeff Flake. That's about all. Peace out.